What's going on, guys? Bengal again here, coming back at you with another video. Today we're going to be ranking pretty much every relevant quarterback in the NFL. There are 52 different QBs on this list. A few disclaimers before we start the video. I am recording this in May of 2020, so this is based on what we know now. Accounting a little bit for potential improvement and development and where some of these rookies might be, because there are rookies on this list, but this is not for the 2020 season necessarily, but it's what they did in 2019, 2018, 2017, kind of the rest of their careers factor in, because there's more to a player than just their previous season. I think that's extremely apparent. So we have a number of different categories on here. Big shout out to Thiath, by the way, for making this. And he's going to be doing the running back and receiver as well. Those will be videos on this channel. Subscribe if you're new. So based on what happens in the 2020 season, a lot of these are going to change a lot. I know everyone's going to disagree with everything. It's going to be a terrible list, but this is based off my opinion, based on not only I guess statistics accumulated is being factored in slightly, but it's based on like talent, production, skill over the past few years or so. And the first one's a really interesting one to start off with. We have elite, borderline elite, star potential, average, serviceable, backup, and bust. Bust is just like worse than backup, I guess. And then like, you guys are going to see some of these players are in odd spots, I think, but Aaron Rodgers is one of these guys that I think is in borderline star to borderline elite at this point in his career. He has dropped off, I think, significantly based off of his like MVP caliber self. I think he's one of the most talented quarterbacks in NFL history, but just right now, it'd be tough to put him anywhere above star. I'm not sure he's quite at that level anymore. I'm going to put him in borderline elite, but he's playing barely at that level anymore. Andy Dalton, I think he's just a classic backup. He's serviceable. I know he's a backup right now, but he's a serviceable quarterback. He's not amazing. He's not great. Baker Mayfield is going to go into star potential. He was phenomenal his rookie year, was not very good last year. And I think Baker Mayfield is a really good quarterback. He's almost like borderline average at this point just because like he did not have a good season last year, but it's tough to go for multiple coaches every single year, and Freddie Kitchens was definitely not it. But Baker Mayfield, great rookie year. Hopefully he's going to bounce back. He's definitely in that star potential range. Big Ben, I think at this point, is also in star potential, and potential is like just the tier underneath star. It's not like Big Ben could get back to star level. He's a good player, throws for a lot of yards. The Steelers passed the ball a lot. Didn't play at all last year. He's getting way older at this point. He was drafted in 2004. So it's been a while that Big Ben's been in the NFL. This is one of his final years, you'd have to assume. And I think he's in that star range, just not quite the player he used to be. This is Brian Hoyer. Brian Hoyer is a bust, or a backup, excuse me. Like, he's not someone that's even a serviceable starter. He's just like, he shouldn't be starting for anyone, but he's okay to come in a pinch if he get an injury. I think that's about where he fits. Cam Newton, I think, is in average. He's almost star potential. He's kind of in that range. Just injuries have really held him back. Cam Newton is star potential when he's healthy. We just don't really know if that's going to be the case for the rest of his career. He's been so plagued by injury, and especially that shoulder last year. But Cam Newton's good when he's healthy and playing. I'm going to leave him in star potential, actually, because Cam is good when he's on the field and healthy. Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz, I think, is in star. Carson Wentz is a really good player, severely underrated based on injury concern. But, I mean, his injuries, it's not like he's injury prone, right? It's not like it's one nagging injury to a certain area. It's like he tore his ACL. He got a concussion in the playoffs from Clowney falling on the back of his head. He had like a back strain a couple of years ago. He doesn't really miss as many games as people want to think. It's just like, it's been these playoff games that he's kind of been out of. But Carson Wentz is really, really good when he's healthy. Here's the next one, Case Keenum. I want to call him serviceable. He's definitely not the player that he was in Minnesota for that one breakout season, but he's okay again to come in a pinch, serviceable to backup level player. Chad Henne, he's not really a bust, but Chad Henne should not be playing at all at this level. I don't even think he's Brian Hoyer-esque at this point. We're going to put him in bust, which is obviously he's not a bust because he's not like a first-round draft pick that didn't pan out. Chad Henne's just always been a backup QB that's been in some situations where he's been required to play more, like with the Jaguars, for example. Dak Prescott. This is one where I'm going to get flamed for this no matter what I do, because there are Cowboys fans that want him up here or here or here. There are Dak haters that want him like here or here. I think Dak is an average QB in a fantastic situation. Like, he's probably in star potential, to be honest. I think he's about the same level as some of these other QBs in here, like Baker and Big Ben and Cam Newton. He's got some great pieces around him. I think Dak, for what he is, which is a good athlete, who's a game manager, 4th-round draft pick, has made a little nice career for himself, but I can't really put him any higher than star potential. He's a good player. He's definitely above average. But he's not even a top 5, probably not even a top 10 QB in the league. But he's probably about star potential. I know I clown on him a lot on Twitter, but you know, he is what he is. He's okay. He has some good games, has some not so good games. Accuracy's always been a concern of his, but he's developing a deep ball. He's in a great situation again. It'll be interesting to see how he plays next season. If he does, he's not even under contract right now. Daniel Jones. Didn't have a very good rookie year, honestly. I know people like to look at his touchdowns. He had some great games, but overall, and especially looking at advanced metrics and actually watching him play, he had some really bad misses. He's extremely turnover prone, but he also showed flashes of being a really good quarterback. I think Daniel Jones is in serviceable to average at this point. You'd expect him to take a step up in his second year. He hasn't really had the best of weapons to work with, but Daniel Jones, he has potential. He was not really that good last year. I know people, look at his touchdowns. Oh, he's so great. He was not very good. But I think average is about the range for Daniel Jones right now. He's maybe one of the best 20 or 25 QBs in the league, but you really can't put him much higher than that because he just isn't there yet. David Blau is, I think, backup range. Played well when he got to play in Detroit, but he should not be starting on any team at all. Derek Carr. I think Derek Carr is in average as well. I think he's definitely better than Daniel Jones at this point. I think he's maybe in that star potential range, actually. But Derek Carr is he's not really a franchise level QB. I'm unsure what the Raiders are going to do in the future. They should probably end up moving on at some point. But Derek Carr still remains their starting QB. I think he's about the same level as these other guys. Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson's a weird one because he had some great pieces. DeAndre Hopkins no longer there. The offensive line has not been a great pass blocking offensive line, even though they've been very good as a run blocking offensive line, especially on power runs. I was talking about that from Football Outsiders the other day on Twitter. But Deshaun Watson, I mean, he puts himself in some bad situations. I think he was either first or second in sacks attributed directly to the quarterback over the past few seasons. Dak was the other one. I think they were flip-flopping as 1 and 2. But Deshaun Watson's decent. He makes a lot of plays with his legs. And by extending plays, and there is a value to that. I think he's probably in star. I don't love Deshaun Watson as a passer, but overall as a QB and kind of the new direction that quarterback is trending in spread offenses, Deshaun Watson works and is pretty good. Drew Brees is in borderline elite. People are going to be mad at me. They're going to tell me about his completion percentage. The Saints are in a perfect offense for Drew Brees where it's entirely relevant on short to intermediate passes and being smart. And Drew Brees is one of the best quarterbacks of all time, as smart as they come. And even though his completion percentage was amazing, he accumulates a ton of yards every year, his individual play has dropped off a little bit in terms of what he brings to the table with that arm talent. And the offense has changed around that. But Drew Brees is just not elite. He's in that borderline elite range where he was once fantastic, is still extremely good, but just is not one of the top elite players in the league. I have 2 elite quarterbacks, and Drew Brees is just not quite there anymore, even though he's still fantastic. But people are going to be mad at me for that. Get over it. You feel free to disagree. Obviously, I know that's going to happen. Drew Locke. Drew Locke, we're going to put in average as well. He showed flashes last year also. Just, you kind of don't know exactly what you have just there. But he has no excuses right now with some of the weapons that they have on offense with Jerry Jeudy, with Courtland Sutton, with Noah Fant, with KJ Hamler in the slot. Jerry Jeudy probably rotating in the slot as well. With Albert Okwuegbunam, his Mizzou weapon beast from a few years ago, now reunited in Denver. Phillip Lindsay is great in the backfield. They picked up Melvin Gordon. I mean, this Broncos offense could be really good. So Drew Lock could definitely end up moving a lot. Dwayne Haskins, I think, is an average as well. He certainly has potential. People hate on Dwayne Haskins a ton. I'm not really sure why. He has absolutely no weapons in Washington outside of Terry McLaurin, who was a rookie last year, who played really, really well, but there's nothing outside of Terry McLaurin. And they don't really have a good offensive line. They have Brandon Scherf. They traded away Trent Williams. And over the second half of the season last year for Dwayne Haskins, he was really, really solid. And I'm not sure if people just aren't watching him play, which I don't blame you. I wouldn't watch the Redskins either. But Dwayne Haskins is a really solid player. Ton of potential. Was great the second half of the season last year, despite not having anything really. So Dwayne Haskins is someone I would look out for this next season to kind of take a step up and continue to improve. Gardner Minshew Mania. I think he's in the same range as serviceable to average. He was solid last year. Fumbled the ball a little bit too much for my liking, but had some moments. I don't really think he's a starter, but he did play pretty well last year, so I'm going to stick him in average. I think that's a good range for him. Jacoby Brissette. He's serviceable. Probably shouldn't really be a starter. And he's probably going to be a backup in Indianapolis this year with Phillip Rivers, you'd have to imagine starting. But I don't think he's terrible. He's just not a franchise caliber guy. Jake Fromm, we're going to throw in backup. Solid player at Georgia. Doesn't really offer a whole lot in terms of upside. Doesn't have the best arm. Processes things pretty well. He's a smart player. I think that's what a career backup kind of does. He'll be a starter at some point, by the way. I think almost certainly. He got drafted by who? The Bills? Josh Allen gets injured, or Jake Fromm most likely will end up on a different team starting at some point. I would almost guarantee that. But for right now, he's probably a decent backup, one of the better ones, and he's a rookie. This is Jalen Hertz, drafted in the second round by the Eagles. I think he's probably in backup range as well. It's going to be interesting to see how he's utilized. I'm not sure if the Eagles are going to try a Taysom Hill-like thing with him, or they're just going to keep him as a backup QB. Jalen Hurts, he's another guy kind of like Dak Prescott to me, where he's a good athlete, kind of does what he's asked. He's a game manager. He's not really going to win you games, but if you put good pieces around him, you could probably have a pretty successful team. So Jalen Hurts, I think, is a solid backup for sure. Don't know if I'd spend a second-round pick on him if I were the Philadelphia Eagles, but with Carson Wentz's apparent injury history, maybe that isn't the worst decision. Jameis Winston, now a backup in New Orleans. But you know what? Jameis is certainly at least average. He's had some really, really bad turnover issues. He threw like 30 picks last year, ridiculously bad. But he makes some crazy throws. He's a good quarterback who just needs to be smarter. If Jameis Winston could stop throwing into multiple coverage, either double coverage, triple coverage, consistently, he would be a good QB. He'd be much higher. He'd probably be closer to star, honestly. But he throws way, way too many interceptions just from pure stupid throws. So if he can cut those out, he'll certainly be much better. I think Jared Goff is in star potential range as well. I don't think Goff is anything special. He does make some great throws on occasion. I don't think he's the smartest QB in terms of processing and going through reads. I feel like Sean McVay does a lot of that. Based on some of these reports that have come out, it's him running the entire offense and Jared Goff having to wait for Sean McVay to figure out what's going on with the defense and then telling him, where to go with the football. But Goff has a decent arm. Touch is there. Accuracy can be there. Jared Goff's a good player, probably not a number one overall pick type player, even though he was drafted at that spot, but he's certainly decent. Jarrett Stidham. I think Stidham is... We don't really know. I'm going to stick him in backup for now. I know he's going to be the starting quarterback in New England. He was okay at Auburn. Wasn't anything spectacular, and that's kind of what you have to go off of because he just hasn't had much NFL experience at all, obviously, with Tom Brady in front of him last year. So Jarrett Stidham's a wild card. He could definitely move up into average, maybe even star potential with a good season, but I feel like for right now, backup is a good spot for him. Jimmy Garoppolo is probably average as well. He doesn't really do anything crazy. He's a decent QB, hands the ball off a lot. I mean, the 49ers run the ball more than anybody else in the league, except for maybe the Titans. I think they're still number one in terms of running the football. Jimmy G kind of does what he has to do. I don't think he does anything crazy well, but he's a game manager. He's solid enough. Now, this is an interesting one. Joe Burrow has never played a snap in the NFL. Where can I put him? Number one overall pick. I have high expectations for Joe Burrow. It'd be very tough for me to stick him anywhere but average at this point. I almost want to stick him in star potential, but I mean, we haven't seen him play a snap in the NFL. And for the sake of consistency and not, overvaluing guys that have never played, I'm going to stick him in average. I think Joe Burrow can be a very good player, but we just don't know what he's going to do yet. So sticking him with some of these other first-round QBs who had decent seasons last year, Haskins, Jones, decent. Drew Locke was a third-round pick, I believe. Maybe end of the second, but I think he was a third-round guy. I think tough. It doesn't really matter. Second or third round pick. Joe Burrow probably in that same range for right now is good. This is Jordan Love from Utah State. I like Jordan Love a lot. Right now we're going to stick him in serviceable. I don't think he's quite to the level of Joe Burrow. I think he's got to sit behind someone for a few years or a year or two. And thankfully, they have Aaron Rodgers in front of him, so he doesn't have to be forced into playing right away. I think Jordan Love has a ton of potential, but he's not ready to go right away. He just got to get, some of his flaws coached up, which is like holding the ball too long in situations, and throwing with more. And it's not that he doesn't necessarily do this, but throwing with more anticipation on some routes, because on comeback routes, especially things going to the wide side of the field or outside, he just holds the football too long and throws the ball too late, and that results in interceptions, which is no good. But Josh Allen, I think, is borderline star potential. I'm going to stick him in average. He's just not accurate, and he makes some stupid decisions. But accuracy is the biggest thing. People are going to be mad about this one as well. Josh Allen, he's too erratic, man. He's got a really strong arm, but that doesn't mean a whole lot if you can't deliver the ball on time and on the money. Those are the two things. You want to be accurate, and Josh Allen's accuracy is just not there still. And even though he does a lot on the ground, he does a lot with his legs, does a lot with his athleticism as a whole, I can't say that he's as good as any of these QBs above him. He's borderline, but not quite. So Josh Allen goes in average for me. He's probably at the top of average, but borderline star potential. It's tough. I don't know. I just don't know. I'll stick him in star potential. I don't know. Josh Allen, he's got to figure out, how to throw the ball accurately in the NFL and throw with anticipation. That's another thing he does not do. So that is a problem. This is Josh Rosen. I'm going to stick him in backup. He just hasn't really gotten a whole lot of opportunities. He played a little bit in Arizona, or a lot in Arizona. Really god-awful team. Was traded the next year to Miami, where he played a little bit, but that was really Ryan Fitzpatrick's team. You don't really know with Josh Rosen just yet. I think he could have a good career. I think he could make his way all the way up to at least star potential, but he just hasn't shown that and hasn't been that. I think backup is good for him. Justin Herbert, I'm going to stick in serviceable as well. I think he's about on the same level as Jordan Love, so that's good range for him. Kirk Cousins is star potential. He's just not quite star, in my opinion. He's a good player. He probably is star, honestly. He is accurate. He's a smart guy. My big knock on him is he's afraid to take bigger shots sometimes, and misses opportunities. And I think maybe that was one of the reasons Stephon Diggs wanted out of there. But he's a little bit too safe at times, but he's accurate, and he certainly worked his way up from what he was in Washington. So hats off to Kirk Cousins on kind of becoming the quarterback that he is now, getting a huge contract a couple years ago. Kyle Allen, I don't even think is as good as a backup range. I think he's bust territory. That's not a QB you want playing at all. I think he's on the Redskins now. He just should not ever be starting, and he's like a second or third backup on a team at best. Kyler Murray is star potential for sure. He was so good last year, man. He was really, really solid, and had some big concerns based on his height and some of the things he showed at Oklahoma. But you know what? The offense is tailor-made for him there in Arizona. He's in the perfect situation. They have DeAndre Hopkins now. They have got a lot of great pieces around him, and he should have a pretty solid season, man. I think Kyler Murray could absolutely go off this year, so who knows where he is. I probably couldn't put him in borderline elite after next year if he goes off, even if he wins like an MVP, but he can make it up in a star easily. But star potential, I think, is a good range for him. Lamar Jackson, I would say, it's so tough. It's so tough. I almost want to stick him in star, and I think I'm going to. Obviously won the MVP last year. This is going to upset some people too. But we really have only seen it for a year. And even though he was fantastic last year on the run, in the running game, I should say, and then through the air as a passer. He was very good in all facets of the game. He's so close to borderline elite. I just got to see more of it. That's really all it is. Just need to see him maintain that level. And even if he takes a step back, he still probably is going to be very good. So star, borderline elite is where he belongs. I'm going to stick him at the top of star just because we need to see more of it. Here is Marcus Mariota. Mariota, I think, is serviceable. He's a decent guy if he has to come in, but his injuries have really held his career back. So I think that's probably a fair placing for him. Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph's a backup. Doesn't really offer a whole lot more than that. I don't even know that he's serviceable. He's okay. Matt Ryan, I think, is borderline elite range as well. If I stick Matt Ryan at borderline elite, I probably have to stick Lamar Jackson there. I feel like Matt Ryan at star is a good range. I don't know. I might end up changing these a little bit. It's kind of tough at the moment because I feel like Matt Ryan's probably on the same level of Aaron Rodgers at this point. I feel like Lamar Jackson is as well. I'm actually going to stick both of them in borderline elite, even though I'm not sure they're all quite on the same level as Drew Brees. But you know, I feel like that works pretty well. This is Matt Stafford. I think Matt Stafford is borderline star. I think he's probably at the top of star potential as well. He's a really good quarterback when he's healthy. He's another guy that's like, he struggled with injuries a little bit in his career. I feel like he is a slightly upgraded Josh Allen. I feel like that's what he offers you. A little bit less mobility, but also cannon of an arm, but definitely more accuracy, and he's a smarter quarterback. Throws with anticipation. Does things well. I'm not sure that he's quite star anymore, but I feel like he's just as good as Kirk Cousins, maybe. Maybe I'll stick Stafford in star, but injuries have held him back. Trubisky's not good at all. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. He's honestly bust range. Mitch Trubisky's terrible, and was taken, number 2 overall. Trubisky's brutally bad, but is he worse than Mason Rudolph or Josh Rosen or Jake Fromm or Jarrett Stidham? You know, maybe he is. I mean, Mitch Trubisky's just brutally bad. I think backup's a good range for him. He's just so awful. Sorry. Nick Foles, that's another guy where he's serviceable. Had a playoff run. He should not be a starting quarterback. He's in that good backup to come in a pinch and start, be a solid player range. Patrick Mahomes is certainly elite. He's the best quarterback in the NFL. Showed it last season again. All right, I'm like, give credit where credit's due. He is definitely the best. He's almost in a tier of his own, but he is a fantastic. Phillip Rivers, I'm going to put into star potential. 2 years ago, he was fantastic. Top 5 QB in the NFL, without question. He was really, really good 2 years ago. Last year, really, really bad. So he drops from borderline elite to star potential after last season. I don't know if that was just, his regression hitting hard, or if maybe it was just a down year. He can bounce back in Indianapolis. Has some weapons there, man. Has some good tight ends. Jack Doyle, it's not great, but is decent. Paris Campbell, healthy, could take a step up. T.Y. Hilton, obviously. There are some weapons there that he can work with in Indianapolis, especially if Michael Pittman Jr. plays well. So we'll have to see how that goes. I think he's borderline average at this point, but out of respect for the rest of his career in the years previous, we're going to stick him in star potential. This is RG3. He is a backup. RG3 shouldn't be starting on any team. He probably shouldn't even be a second backup. I feel like he's almost in bust territory. He doesn't really offer you anything. Russell Wilson is without question elite. He is amazing. He just doesn't get the respect that he deserves, and it's kind of wild because Russell Wilson is incredible. He would have been the MVP last year if not for Lamar Jackson absolutely going off. So Russell Wilson, monster player. And as I said, it's more than just last year for me. So Russell Wilson, I think, is definitely better than Lamar Jackson, even though Jackson definitely had a better year last year. Ryan Fitzpatrick is average. I think he's better than serviceable. He's a guy that's just kind of been good enough his entire career to stay on rosters and start for teams. I think average is pretty good for Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's had some good years on him. Ryan Tannehill, people are going to want star potential for him. He hands off the football. He's another game manager, kind of like Dak, where he just kind of does what he needs to, but doesn't really offer you a whole lot. He's an average player. I don't really think he does much more than that. Sam Darnold is perhaps serviceable. I'm not even sure he's as good as Daniel Jones or Dwayne Haskins. He's definitely not as good as Josh Allen. He just really hasn't done anything. He's just not that good, as predicted. I think maybe if I'm being nice, I'll stick him in average, just because maybe he's better than Andy Dalton, but is he really? No. Is he better than Nick Foles or Mariota? Not really. Sam Darnold just hasn't done anything. Taysom Hill is not a quarterback, so he's going to go in a bust range or backup range. He's just not a quarterback. I know he played some quarterback at BYU, but hasn't done that at all in the NFL. I would not trust him to start games. Taysom Hill, backup, I think for sure. Teddy Bridgewater is, I think, average. He's on the same level as like a Tannehill or Jimmy Garoppolo. Sam Darnold just does not belong here, but who knows what he'll do. He hasn't had any help either. Tom Brady is probably borderline elite. Tom Brady is a really solid player. 42 or 43 years old at this point. He wasn't even that bad last year, man. He had a good playoff game too. The Patriots just ended up losing to the Titans. He's solid. He just is another guy that hasn't had much to work with. I anticipate with O.J. Howard, if they ever use their tight end down there in Tampa Bay with Bruce Arians, and now Gronk coming back healthy after taking a year off, and Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, Tom Brady could have a very good year. Tua. I'm going to throw Tua right next to Joe Burrow. I think they're probably about on the near the same level. It's going to be interesting to see what Tua does with the Dolphins, man. There's not a ton of help for him down there. The offensive line is brutally bad. Mike Gesicki's okay. Devontae Parker enjoyed a great breakout season finally last year. I think Preston Williams is a solid receiver. But it's certainly not the best of offenses to go into. And the last player on this list is Tyrod Taylor. I think he is serviceable. So this is my rankings or tier list. Some of the guys from star to average are in a weird spot where I feel like a lot of these guys could flip-flop. Be sure to tell me how wrong and stupid I am in the comment section below. I always love to read those. And I will see you guys in the next one. Stay tuned for running back, wide receiver, and however many more you'd like me to do. And I will see you in the next one. Take it easy.